The Legend of Zelda is a franchise that's been around for over 35 years and has released countless classics. The beauty of this franchise is that whenever you ask a person what their favorite Zelda is, you can never be certain which game they will choose. Ocarina of Time, considered to be the greatest game of all time for a generation, with a timeless story and a revolutionary gameplay in a third dimension. A Link to the Past, the OG, except actually the third game, the game that perfected 2D Zelda. Link's Awakening, a game with a colorful world, great characters, and an interesting moral dilemma. Wind Waker, a heartfelt adventure on the open sea about a boy who wants to save his sister, with a charming world and one of the best iterations of Ganondorf. Twilight Princess, a darker return to form compared to its predecessor, with dark lore and some of the most diverse dungeons in the series combined with ties back to Ocarina of Time. A Link Between Worlds, a follow-up to A Link to the Past that nobody asked for, but yet everybody loves, myself included. With an open-ended dungeon order and the rental system, it makes for the pinnacle of 2D Zelda. Breath of the Wild and its follow-up Tears of the Kingdom, open-world Zelda with endless possibilities. If you were to ask me what my favorite Zelda game is, depending on the day of the week, I would give you one of two games. A Link Between Worlds for the 3DS, or the subject of this video, The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask for the longest time was considered the black sheep of the series. Thankfully, we live in the timeline where everybody realized that was stupid, and this game is actually amazing. Majora's Mask is a game that's dark, it's disturbing, it invokes fear and desperation. But it also invokes hope. I could give you a multi-hour video essay about why this game is the pinnacle of the franchise and one of the greatest games of all time, but I'm not going to do that. Majora's Mask is a game that speaks for itself just by simply looking at it. There is no game that is like Majora's Mask. In this game, so many of the things we are familiar with are either gone or twisted. There is no Hyrule, no Zelda, no Master Sword. It's simply Link, trapped in a distorted world of both familiarity and alien. To truly get the most out of this game, I highly recommend you play Ocarina of Time first. The stories are only loosely connected, but what many would consider a negative, I would consider a positive, and possibly one of the game's best strengths. It's the reuse of characters from Ocarina of Time. More specifically, the character models. Many of the characters in Majora's Mask share the faces of those you met in the previous journey, yet they don't remember you, because they aren't the same person, but simply a reflection in the mirror. You watch these characters live out their lives over the course of 3 days and realize that these people actually feel alive, like real people. They have relationships, they have worries, they have fears, but yet through your actions, some are able to grasp hope. Take Anju and Cafe for example, the game's most well-known side quest. Lovers who are ripped apart because of the Skull Kid, the one who wields Majora's Mask. If the player doesn't act, then their story will end in tragedy. Anju will lose hope in her love and eventually flee with everyone else. But because of you, she's able to believe in Cafe and doesn't flee from the end of the world, choosing the hope of love over her fear of death. It's no secret that in Majora's Mask, the world is going to end in 3 days when the moon falls from the sky, killing everyone. In most games, you would have an infinite amount of time to actually solve the main quest, the plot progressing when you want it to. But in Majora's Mask, you actually are on the clock. While the moon may always be looming above and visible from most places, you can never truly escape the clock that sits on your screen at all times. This is just another way that the game is able to immerse the player into its world. The entire world is dictated by this clock. NPCs all follow a certain schedule, and depending on how the player interacts with them in a given cycle, their outcomes may change. Certain events will also only take place on certain days, like minigames in Clocktown or the photo contest in the swamp. The story and characters are fantastic, but how is the gameplay surrounding them? Well, it's just as good. Majora's Mask is built on top of the Ocarina of Time engine, so if you played that one, then you know what's going on. You explore a 3D world, explore different cultures across the land, face perilous dungeons, fight dangerous bosses. So many exciting things to see. The dungeons in Majora's Mask are some of the best in the franchise. In fact, my favorite Zelda dungeon is one of them. Can you guess which one it is? I'll give you a second to guess. If you guessed the Great Bay Temple, then you would be correct. This dungeon doesn't have a good reputation in the Zelda community. Many people find the process of directing the water to be confusing and difficult, which I personally don't agree with. I find it to be one of the most satisfying dungeons in the franchise. But the other three in this game are all pretty good too. Yes, there are only 4 dungeons, but Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom also only had 4 to 5, and everybody loves those games, despite those dungeons actually being really bad. What gives the dungeons in Majora's Mask an extra layer of depth compared to other Zelda games is the fact that it's not just Link's arsenal of tools needed to conquer them, but the power of the other species in Termina. Masks are one of the biggest gimmicks in Majora's Mask outside of the 3-day time limit. Most masks are only helpful for certain situations or quests, but not the transformation mask. There are 3 main transformations and 1 bonus one for collecting all the masks in the game. The Deku, the Goron, and the Zora, each representing increased mobility in the air, on the ground, and in the water respectively. Sprout from flowers and take to the skies as Deku Link, dropping aerial bombardments on foes. Speed across the lands at never-before speeds thanks to the Goron's rolling. And glide through the water as Zora Link, with swimming controls that have never been so fun before or since Majora's Mask. Majora's Mask is one of the smaller 3D Zelda games in terms of scope, but yet, thanks to all of its unique mechanics, its dark story, the humanity of the characters you meet, and the looming threat above, Majora's Mask marks a spot as one of the greatest and most fascinating experiences in all of gaming. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom created many new fans of the Zelda franchise, and thanks to the Switch, they have access to so many old titles. Majora's Mask is available on Switch Online for anyone who has the expansion pass. I could go on for hours about why this game is a masterclass of design, but I want new players to be able to experience the story as raw as possible. If you're ready to take the plunge, I recommend you all dive into the world of Termina and find despair and hope alike in a land of familiar and distant.